Sodium-ion batteries are popping up everywhere on tech channels these days. You've probably seen videos saying sodium will replace lithium, but is that actually true? Is it really about more than just being cheaper? We're about to examine whether this is actually feasible from both a technical and industry perspective. Sodium-ion batteries use sodium, the same element that makes up salt. Sodium is about 1,000 times more abundant than lithium. It's the sixth most common element on Earth, and that makes it much cheaper. When lithium prices soar, sodium can cost hundreds of times less. Because it is everywhere, the supply chain risk stays low. Compared to lithium, whose price jumps as battery demand rises, sodium stays relatively stable. Its redox potential is minus 2.71 volts, which is only about 0.3 volts higher than lithium, so it still works really well as an electrode material. So over the past few years, countless research teams have been working day and night to bring sodium-ion batteries to life. Interestingly, research on the sodium-ion battery began around the same time as the lithium-ion battery, back during the oil crisis in the 1970s. But isn't that curious? Why are we still mainly using lithium-ion batteries today? The story actually started in a similar way. In 1967, based on work by Kummer and Weber, Ford Motor Company began studying a high-temperature sodium-ion battery that used beta alumina as a solid electrolyte. This research became the foundation of today's sodium-ion batteries. The idea was to melt solid sodium and sulfur to secure conductivity. In simple terms, the battery worked by heating the solid materials above 572 degrees. Handling that kind of heat required a very precise manufacturing process. For a while, sodium-ion battery technology seemed to be on track, but in September 2011, something unexpected happened. At NGK's plant in Mie Prefecture in Japan, the world's largest sodium-sulfur battery manufacturer at the time, an explosion occurred at an ESS installation site. No one was hurt, but it completely changed the direction of research. Because high-temperature sodium-sulfur batteries relied on strong heat reactions, concerns about their safety grew quickly. Researchers now had to find a new path, a battery that could operate safely at room temperature. So, scientists started looking for a way to use only sodium ions instead of using solid sodium directly, similar to how a lithium-ion battery works. Was that easy? Not at all. If you look at the periodic table, lithium and sodium are both in group 1. They sit just one spot apart. This tiny gap ended up creating a big technical challenge. A sodium ion is about 34% larger and 3.3 times heavier than a lithium ion. In a battery, ions need to move quickly through tight pathways to generate current. When the ions get bigger, they slow down and react less efficiently. It is like trying to carry a big load through a narrow hallway. Scientists wondered if they could follow the same recipe as the lithium-ion battery, but the cathode, the anode, and the electrolyte all needed their own breakthroughs for the sodium-ion battery. Because sodium behaves differently, nothing fit the way it used to. It was almost like having to rebuild the entire kitchen, from the oven to the trays. Lithium-ion batteries use graphite as the anode, but that didn't work for sodium-ion batteries. The layers in graphite were simply too narrow to store the larger sodium ions. In the 2000s, scientists found a breakthrough called hard carbon. Hard carbon has nanometer-sized pores that create ideal pathways for sodium ions to move and be stored. The discovery of hard carbon also pushed electrolyte research forward. The electrolyte is the medium that carries ions between the cathode and anode. Early sodium-sulfur batteries used a solid ceramic electrolyte called beta alumina, but at room temperature, there wasn't enough energy for ions to travel through the ceramic. Scientists kept trying to use organic electrolytes, similar to those in lithium-ion batteries, and the attempts kept failing. But once hard carbon appeared, they realized that organic electrolytes combined with hard carbon were the answer. Once the anode problem was solved, the cathode needed an upgrade too. High-temperature sodium-ion batteries used molten sulfur, but that approach no longer worked. They needed a new structure where sodium ions could move in and out freely. Because sodium ions are larger and heavier than lithium ions, the structure had to be redesigned from scratch. In the 2010s, multiple promising cathode materials appeared, including Prussian blue compounds, layered oxides, and polyanionic compounds. These cathode materials required no cobalt, which is one of the most expensive raw materials. They could be synthesized using lower-cost elements like iron and manganese, which made sodium-ion batteries more affordable. Sodium-ion batteries had been stuck in research for years, but around 2020, they suddenly popped into the spotlight. Did a compelling solution emerge in the meantime? It wasn't so much a breakthrough as it was a growing sense of urgency. Recently, lithium prices have stabilized around $8,000 to $10,000 per ton, based on lithium carbonate. But only 2 or 3 years ago, prices shot up to nearly $70,000 per ton. Just like how the oil shock in the 1970s pushed car and oil companies to start looking into batteries, the peak in lithium prices pushed the battery industry to search more aggressively for alternative materials. Thanks to efforts from both the scientific community and industry, there was major progress starting in 2020. Sodium ions are larger and heavier, so they store less energy. But scientists improved storage capacity by controlling the micropores in hard carbon. The structure of unstable cathode materials was also improved, so sodium ions could enter more easily and stay stable. Electrolytes improved as well. with additives that helped sodium ions move more easily, bringing the technology closer to commercialization. In the early 2010s, the energy density of sodium-ion batteries was only 80 to 100 watt-hours per kilogram. Now, they can reach around 140 to 160 watt-hours per kilogram. At the lab stage, there have been reports of technologies that push energy density to around 200 watt-hours per kilogram and target cycle life ranges of 10,000 to 20,000 cycles. That's nearly double the performance we saw only 2 or 3 years ago. However, these numbers come from controlled lab environments, and they still need to be verified at the mass production cell level. It's true that sodium is more abundant and cheaper than lithium, but there's still a lot of debate about how much cheaper a sodium-ion battery can actually become once it is made into a battery. Lithium prices have stabilized, and LFP battery prices have dropped sharply to around $60 per kilowatt-hours. But it's also important to note that the cathode material doesn't take up as much of the total battery cost as people expect. Interestingly, the anode current collector in a sodium-ion battery uses aluminum instead of copper, which can reduce collector costs slightly. Carbon used as the anode material is abundant on Earth, so it helps lower cost as well. However, hard carbon used in batteries needs to be treated at extremely high temperatures. For example, if you use plant materials like corn stalks or rice husks, they must be refined at about 2,200 to 2,500 degrees. Because the process has to be very precise, some argue that hard carbon isn't always cheaper than graphite. To build a battery pack with the same kilowatt hours, more cells are required because sodium-ion batteries are heavier and take up more space. This increases overhead costs, like the case, the module, the BMS, and thermal management. That's why some believe it'll be difficult for sodium-ion batteries to be more than 20% cheaper than LFP batteries. Their manufacturing process is similar to lithium-ion batteries, so the overall cost-down curve will likely be faster than other new battery types. But it's also true that it will take decades for the technology to fully stabilize. So, sodium-ion batteries have made huge progress recently, and many of the technical challenges seem to be getting solved. But like we asked in the beginning, are sodium-ion batteries really meant to replace lithium-ion batteries? The short answer is that they probably won't replace them in every field, but they are a very strong candidate as a complementary battery. Every battery has a place where it fits perfectly. Some batteries are built for a single burst of power, like fire alarms, while others release energy slowly over long periods, like in deep-sea exploration. We also have small batteries for daily portable devices, long-range EV batteries, compact city EV batteries, and batteries used in ESS or stationary IoT devices. The future will not be dominated by a single battery. Even now, researchers are working to commercialize diverse battery technologies. Sodium-ion batteries will give us more options and will form a solid battery portfolio alongside next-generation batteries like solid-state batteries and lithium-sulfur batteries. One interesting thing about the sodium-ion battery is that even though its origins trace back to high-temperature cells that operated above 572 degrees, the optimized structure developed over the years now lets sodium ions store and move well at low temperatures. That makes sodium-ion batteries far more cold-resistant than lithium-ion batteries. They can handle temperatures down to -4 degrees without any issues. Some experiments have even reported stable power output at around -40 degrees. It really feels like a science version of A Song of Ice and Fire. Thanks to this stability, the sodium-ion battery is gaining attention as an alternative in areas where lead-acid batteries are commonly used, such as stop-and-go systems, as well as energy storage systems in extremely cold regions like northern Canada. Its potential as a stop-and-go battery is especially promising. It has higher energy density, and while traditional lead-acid batteries last only 300 to 800 cycles, sodium-ion batteries are reported to reach 2,000 to as many as 5,000 cycles. That means they can be used much longer. They also discharge more slowly, and even though sodium ions are heavier, the battery itself is still lighter than a lead-acid battery, which makes it a strong replacement candidate. Sodium-ion batteries are still too large and heavy to replace EV batteries, but they can serve as starter batteries and as auxiliary batteries on cold days. There are still challenges like dendrite formation, cycle life, power output, and capacity, but the word impossible no longer fits the sodium-ion battery. What kind of battery do you think you will be using in 10 years? Leave a comment and let us know, and subscribe for more battery insights.